Write It Right, your writing space is a presentation on how we can creatively engage in the process of writing. Writing is a tedious task for many people. At the same time, writing is actually an activity which offers immense pleasure to many. If you ask me personally, writing is something which I enjoy a lot because it helps me to vent out my feelings. It also helps me to be, creatively, to feel that I'm creatively engaging in something, that I'm actually bringing out something new. That the paper is actually a kind of a stage in which I can perform myself, or writing has also helped me to kind of organize my life, especially when I feel the entire thing to be cluttered. I sit down and I write something for some time. I write whatever I feel. I vent out my emotions and my feelings. So basically, personally, it has helped me a lot in understanding myself. At the same time, writing has also helped me in looking at the world with critical eyes. Writing is not simply a personal space alone, but it is a space which, in one way or the other, you engage in critically. You actually open your window to the outside world when you write, because when you write, you need something inside. If it's only when you have something inside that you can really express it on the outside. So basically, writing is all about expressing what you really have taken inside from the outside and giving your point of view, your perspective to the world outside. And writing is basically a commitment to yourself. It is a commitment to the society. It is a commitment, to critique when the entire society and when you yourself are in an intolerant state. It is also a tool to remain positive when the entire environment is negative. And I would say that that part has to be highlighted, because often when we talk about writing, we always talk about the social commitment part, but we seldom think of writing as, a tool to stay positive in negative times. For example, the current corona times, it's really devastating experience for many of us, because many of us are stuck inside. Many of us are in containment zones. Many of us have relatives who have been, or friends who have been tested positive. Many of us have gone through such experiences, similar experiences. So it's psychologically and physically, it's such a tough time right now. But writing is a tool which can definitely help you to stay positive, to believe in humanity. As the author of The Humankind last day mentioned in the interview, writing is that particular tool with which you can kind of bring out something which is positive in a negative loaded world, because staying positive, as he says, is equally a revolutionary act. So let me just move into my presentation. Now, what exactly is creative writing? This is a question which I ask myself almost every day, because creative writing has got immense scope. As I said, it is not simply a personal space, but it is also a space which goes to the outside. It is also a public space. So creative writing, this is something which, what you see in the slide is actually something which I got from others who have talked about creative writing, others have wrote on creative writing. And it's basically, it is about producing an original work. And when I say original work, that does not mean that creative writers should never depend upon those people who went before them. Creative writers are actually highly individualistic. No, it just means that what you bring outside, what you bring out on the paper, is actually something which has been inspired by those who have gone before you, by reading books which have come on the same idea before you have actually, or which actually instigated the thought in you. It's actually an amalgamation of the research which you have done. All that is fine, but the work which you produce must be original. It should have a trademark of yourself. It should not be an exact copying of what had gone before you. It should not be plagiarizing, but basically it should be something which is quite original, which has got a mark of yourself, which is actually which can be considered as something which is purely, dependent on your instinct, your spirit, your creative ideas. So all that goes into the making of such a story, all that goes in the making of such a poem can be called creativity. And creative writing is also the ability to experiment with, the already popular styles and vocabulary, or the words and style which the writer herself or himself is familiar with. And such creative writing need not be popular at the time of prediction. In one of my videos on metaphysical poetry, I had mentioned that when metaphysical poets wrote, nobody really, took them seriously. They actually had to go through serious criticism from the best critics of their times. But after a couple of centuries, what happened was that these people began to be loaded as, those people who were emotionally intellectual and intellectually emotional, people who really experimented with words, with style, with conceits, and all that happens, why? Because they were originally creative. Originally creative people, they always run against the normal. Normal here refers to the norms accepted by the society. So if it is an original work, then please don't expect that to be appreciated at in your lifetime, because it need not necessarily be. It might take some time to appreciate the originality. So what exactly is creative writing? I mean, I cannot give an exact answer to creative writing, but basically creative writing is the production of an original work by standing on the shoulders of the giants and bringing out something which those people who are coming after you can depend upon, and with which you have actually experimented with the already established style and have produced a trademark for yourself. And this is something which runs against a normal or the majority. It should be quite, it should be actually something which comes from inside you. It must be something which expresses your deepest and your finest feelings. And it should be highly, not dependent on you rather than on the technical aspect of it. We are much more concerned about the academic parameters. If you're a critic and a writer, writing is going to be difficult because we have this tendency to look at creativity from a critical point of view after each sentence, and that will hinder your creative writing. Okay, I'll come to it at the end of the presentation. I'll actually end the presentation by mentioning by elaborating what I mentioned right now, because workshop criticism is fine. Okay, I mean, I'm not saying that T.S. Eliot produced mediocre works. Never. He produced the best works he could have ever produced. But at the same time, when you are a critique, you would definitely have some kind of a hindrance when you do creative writing, because you would always tend to look at each and every sentence or each and every line of a poem, each and every paragraph of a story, from critical point of view, that sometimes it might hinder it or it might block your creative spirit. So if you're a critique, kind of, tell your brain, see, I know that I'm a critic, but right now I'm engaged in creative writing, so let my brain be free for some time. I'll come back to criticism later. That is the only way in which you can start creatively engaging in writing, and that's for critiques. For those people who are new to the field and who would definitely like to experiment with creative writing because you are so passionate about reading, you're so passionate about writing, start writing. Now, I've given due credits to the image which I've taken, and that is something which, whether you are a critical writer or a creative writer, you should always keep in mind. Plagiarism is something which cannot be supported in any way. Now, look at this picture. This picture must be familiar to you. And for anybody, you would actually notice the red paper board first. The three white paper boards actually recede in the background, and look at the course which are taken by the paper boards. The three white paper boards are taking the same course. The only difference is that you can call one the first, then another one which follows the first one, and then there is a third one which is trying to keep up with the first and the second. Okay, that is the majority. That is the normal which I mentioned in the last slide. But look at the red paper boat. The red paper boat is different in color. It is and also it is different. It is actually taken a different course. It is not at all concerned about keeping up with the pace of the first white boat. All that it is concerned about is taking a different course, because maybe the red paper boat felt that going along with the normal will only help you to compete with the normal, but taking a different course can definitely help me to find a space for myself. And that is what we call thinking differently. Now, this is a very popular notion, think out of the box. And this is an image, the image which you find on the left-hand side, sorry, right-hand side is actually something which comes on Twitter, on Insta, every now and then. It's Think Outside the Box Thursday, wherein you'll get an image. For example, the image here is that of a butterfly, and then there is a half of that image is sketched on the other or at the end of the page, and you are asked to fill in the rest of it. But take note, it is not a butterfly. Complete the picture below, it is not a butterfly. In normal cases, what we are taught from LKG onwards is to, look at the image and copy the image and color the image as it is. Okay, that is how I was taught in my school days, in my LKG, UKG and first standard. I was supposed to color the image exactly as it is. And how far I succeed in copying the colors exactly as it is will reflect in my grade. And I've always been a very poor a painter, or I got very poor drawing skills that I've never copied anything exactly. And I always used to get very poor marks for coloring and drawing. In spite of, I like drawing, I like colors, I like coloring, but I've never got it right so far. But look at the picture. Now, if you think differently, you can complete that picture, that incomplete picture, not exactly as what is shown above, but in a different manner. Maybe you can make it into the form of a fish. One of my friends told me that she would definitely like to make it a flower. And then one of my friends told me that he would definitely like to make it an upturned pot of, plant. And he drew it for me, and I never thought that such a possibility existed with that particular image. Yeah, it's possible. You can draw a stem, a flower, and a pot underneath, and it will resemble an upturned pot of flower, an upturned pot of land. So I'm sure that many of you would be able to think even more differently. You would definitely bring out something else. If you're a creative writer, or if you want to become a creative writer, the first step is to think differently. Please don't copy the majority. And that is quite easy. It is easy to follow the path of the majority because everybody will support you. But if you think differently, if you start thinking outside the box, if you reprioritize your life, that is quite difficult, but that is the first step to creativity. And thinking differently does not mean that you should be academically brilliant. It's not the top scorers in the class, it's not the rank holders who are creative thinkers. Usually originals procrastinate for a long time. But I'm sorry, I'm not a supporter of procrastination, but what I say is that when originals procrastinate, they don't simply sit. You must have seen the duck or the swan, wading in the waters. It swims as if it's calm. I mean, it's as serene as any object can be in the natural paradise. But the reality happens underneath the water. There is this furious pedaling which happens underneath the water, which nobody else sees. When originals procrastinate, they don't simply procrastinate, they procrastinate differently. You know why? Because they keep thinking all the time. They don't do it. You take a piece of paper and you want to write down a few lines, or you want to pen down a poem, but as Wisława Szymborska says, a poet, if you have watched a poet bringing up a poem, you would find or you would feel that that is the most boring kind of activity a person can engage in. That was actually something which the Russian government could not, kind of accept in the early 20th century, because this is how Szymborska mentioned or talked about it in her Nobel Peace Prize. Nobel Prize for Literature. She said, when a poet sits down to write, this is what happens. He or she takes a pen and a paper, writes down 4 or 5 lines, cuts or strikes across those lines after 10 minutes, and then, sit idly for another half an hour, looking outside the window or stretching himself or herself on the sofa, looking at the blank walls. What kind of an activity is that? And then after half an hour, he or she again pens down a couple of lines, which is again, kind of crumpled. The paper is again crumpled and thrown into the wastebasket. You take a new sheet of paper and then you start rewriting. What kind of an activity is that? But I should say those poets are not simply lying down on sofa and kind of whiling away the time. No, they are not doing that. They are actually procrastinating differently. There is a furious pedaling which happens inside the heart, the spirit, the soul, inside your brain when originals procrastinate differently. So that is the difference between lazy people procrastinating and the originals procrastinating. Because when they procrastinate, they do it differently. They're not simply sitting idle. They are not lazy people. If you are an original thinker, if you are a creative thinker, even when you procrastinate, you will be working inside. On the outside, it's as if you simply while away your time, and people cannot really tolerate that. But if you are an original writer, you will still be furiously thinking about the idea which has come into your mind, about the way in which that idea is to be taken forward, the possibilities of the idea, etc., etc. Thinking differently is equal to widening your perspectives. Everybody has got one particular notion about what happens in the world. Okay, for example, you take a book, you read a book, you got one interpretation, but that need not necessarily be the way in which your friend interprets the same book. If you are a creative thinker, you would have a kind of a wide perspective wherein you will be able to accommodate the other person's interpretation in spite of not agreeing with the other person. Good creative writers are always open. They are not narrow down people. So look at this picture, for example. Look at that picture. You can widen, you have got all possibilities to widen your perspective about how to complete that picture. There is no rule that you should draw only a butterfly. There is no rule that you should draw only a fish. There is no rule that a poem which you started should end as a poem. You can even move on to another genre. Widening perspective is very important if you think differently. See, for example, creative writers or creative thinkers are actually those people who have got widened perspectives that they can even, bring out the very normal things in a very extraordinary manner, or the very ordinary things in an extraordinary manner, as Wordsworth did. You might be familiar with this particular app called Plan Jammer. Now, Plan Jammer actually recently did something which our mothers or our grandmothers had been doing for a long time. What they did was the app said, tell us what you have in your fridge. We will help you clean the fridge. See, if you are interested in cooking, or if you are somebody who's engaged in the kitchen work of your house, you would know that the worst part of maintaining a kitchen is cleaning the fridge, because you would always have a little bit of something left behind. Maybe one carrot and two ladies' fingers and two potatoes, and you cannot really make a dish solely of potatoes, solely of carrot, and solely of lady's finger with these very few number of items at hand. So what our mothers do is they kind of chop it all together and make it into a vegetable curry or a kurma, or they even bring out, they add egg into it and bring out a new kind of a dish. They just experiment with it. And it tastes really good that the next time you demand for it. What Plan Jammer did is Plan Jammer just took this regular habitual thing which our forefathers and grandmothers had been doing for such a long time and made it into an app. So you give the Plan Jammer app what is there inside your fridge. I got maybe a half cup of cocoa and half tin of milk made, maybe 2 cardamom inside my fridge, which I would like to clean up. And I'm just citing a random example. And Plan Jammer gives you 1 or 2 recipes which you can try out. And in the process, you clean the fridge is empty, your stomach is full. So thinking creatively, thinking differently means looking at the ordinary, taking the ordinary and making it into extraordinary. So thinking differently is the first step to widening your perspectives. It is the first step to, creative writing. If you are somebody who can think differently from what the majority thinks, which is considered as norm, I'm sure that you are into creative writing. Now, if you want to think outside the box, you always have to keep a box. Now, this is something which I learned from Twyla Tharp. Twyla Tharp's The Creative Habit is one of the best books I've read on creativity, and I would definitely recommend it to you. Twyla Tharp says that, I hope you know Twyla Tharp. Twyla Tharp is a choreographer. She won 2 Grammys. She's one of the best performers in the world. And she runs a dance group. She does ballet. She does many things, actually. She's 79 plus, quite active, more active than an 18-year-old, I would say. If you have watched her interviews, you would feel that positivity inside her. Now, Twyla Tharp says that she got a room inside her house wherein she stacks all the cardboard boxes which had helped her to form dance performances. Now, I think I should explain that. When an idea strikes her, like she wants to choreograph something, and then when an idea strikes her, the first thing she does is to take out a cardboard box, and then she researches on this idea. She reads print and also on Google. She also Googles. She also tries to collect all the materials which is available online and offline. And if it is a book, if it is a notepad, if it's a sheet of paper, even if it is a souvenir of any kind, if it is a random object that she picked up in between, all that goes into the box. Whatever that goes in the making of the dance performance goes into this cardboard box. So she stores all this together. And then she says, there's a room in my house where I've stacked all these cardboard boxes. So whenever I feel that I'm facing a blank wall, I just go into this room. I walk into the room, I open the door, and box after box, I have labeled, for which performance or which ballet did I use this box. I've labeled them correctly. So box after box, I remind myself that I did all that with the help of such very crude materials, and I could bring out something quite beautiful out of all this. And then a new idea strikes me. So if you want to think out of the box, first be familiar with the box. Keep a box. I'm saying this metaphorically and also, physically. It need not always be a cardboard box. You can even keep a notepad. Because what happens is that after some time, for instance, if you're writing down a board and you got a notepad or you keep a cardboard box, you have an idea. For example, you want to write about a bottle, for instance. Of course, you can write a poem on a bottle. Now, what usually we do is, you want to write about a bottle, you take a paper, you take a pen, and then you simply write down random lines, about a bottle, and then you put your name underneath, the poem is done. Okay, but that's not how good creative writers do, or critical thinkers do, or people who think differently do. What they do is they observe. Observation is very important in creative writing. They observe different kinds of bottles. They walk around, they collect bottles. You collect 3 or 4 bottles, you put it inside that cardboard box. You feel them, you look at them, you talk to the bottles, you get an idea about how bottles look. You go online, you search for the process in which bottles are manufactured. You go to the library, you do a little bit of research on, bottles. Of course, you can. You go back to your own books, the books which you have read and books which have talked about bottles. Maybe a character drinking water from a bottle. The water bottle had been described there. Look at it, the way in which it has been described. Write it down something. Put that paper inside the cardboard box. After doing enough research on bottle, you sit down and you pen down your random thoughts in a notebook and then you convert it into a poem. I say that will be one of the best poems you've ever written. When I say the best, it doesn't mean that you have to prove to the world that you are the best or the poem is the best. But to yourself, of course, you owe a commitment that you have done the best research and you've produced the best work on that idea. Okay, just look at this poem by YEHUDA AMICHAI. It's titled Laundry, and I'll just read it. In a place where laundry is hung, no people die. None are in the wars. They'll stay at least 2 or 3 days. They won't be replaced and they won't flutter. They aren't like the dry grass. Laundry is a very familiar image. A bottle is a very familiar image. But look at the way in which Yehuda Amichai brings together two disparate images. Look at the last line, the dry grass. Have you ever associated laundry with the dry grass? And the dry grass here refers to, the biblical notion or the biblical verse wherein the human life is compared to that of a dry grass, something which is there today and which may not be there tomorrow. So the transience of human life. But the laundry stays for 2 or 3 days. Laundry actually gets a much more permanence than the impermanent human life. Look at the way in which he actually compares these two. One is quite normal, something which you always do. We all wash our clothes, we all hang it out on the clothesline to dry. Laundry is something which is quite familiar to us. Grass is also a familiar object, but look at the way in which he has actually brought these two things together to talk about something which is quite metaphysical, and how he talks about the war in between, because war kills instantly. Instinct for war is also very instant. But in case of a laundry, it takes at least 2 or 3 days for the clothes to get dried. So there is patience in laundry. There is no patience in war. See the possibilities of the meanings which are possible in this particular poem. And how is it possible? Because I'm sure that Yehuda Amichai had been boxing in ideas. He did not write this 8-line poem in just one day. No, he had been observing for many days. He had been observing the grass, he had been observing the laundry, he had been reading about the wars, he had himself been experiencing the terrible forces of migration. So he has gone through it too, and then all this comes together as a poem. Thinking differently does not mean that you should sit stable at one place and close yourself inside or shut yourself in a room and simply write. No, walk out, observe. Observation is very important. Thinking differently means exposing yourself, widening yourself to other possibilities of meanings. And that is how you can bring together or club together such disparate images, like metaphysical poets did, when they compared two lovers to two flies, or two lovers to a compass. That was quite, different from the way in which lovers were being talked about, or lovers were being compared in their times. And they were not appreciated much during those days, but later they were. Especially with the coming in of T.S. Eliot, they started getting even more appreciation in the 20th and the 21st century. And right now they're celebrated writers. I love metaphysical poems. Now, the second thing which is quite important in creative writing is called the memory. Memory is very important. It's not only important in creative writing, it's important everywhere. If you have to live as a very special human being, you need to have memory. I'm not saying the memory, the structure of the memory, but you should have an urge inside you to remember people, to remember places, to remember with gratitude, to remember the life lessons. Memory is very important in creative writing. Why? Because readers always associate ideas with images in their memories. And what you can do is to surprise them by bringing in a different image and evoke their memory. See the way in which YEHUDA AMICHAI did it. Readers, of course, when you hear the title laundry, you expect something about laundry in the poem. But see the way in which he has surprised the reader with something different. So memory is very important for the reader. Memory is important for the writer too. The writer should always record what passes down the lane, I would say. Whatever that he comes or she comes across, she should definitely be somebody who has a good memory, and writing down or jotting it down at somewhere would definitely aid your memory. And that is a way in which you can actually bring out something different. There was actually a poem by Anna Joy. Anna Joy is a close friend of mine, and she has completed her MPhil from Thiruvananthapuram, MPhil in Malayalam, and a couple of her poems that come in Madhrubhumi Aizhapadam. And Kavide Ortha is actually one of her poems. And in this particular poem, she talks about, or the persona talks about her urge to write down a poem, or her the confusion regarding finding out a theme for a poem, and then with this idea, with this particular, that creates a pang inside her mind, she enters a bathroom and takes a bath. And what happens is that the process of taking bath finally ends up as the poem, just like the flow of the water. Because this is, I'm sorry that I don't have the poem with me right now, but what she says is, as she takes a bath, a couple of lines, maybe I can paraphrase here. As she takes a bath, she is visited by a sparrow, and the sparrow becomes a part of a poem. And then a frog crows somewhere outside, that becomes a part of a poem. And then at the end of the bath, as she walks out, she thinks that's it, the end of the bath, the end of the poem. No, it's not, because she can feel the damp hair. When she feels the damp hair, she finds that the poem has followed her. It has not entered in the bathroom. So look at the way in which a poet has actually taken a very normal image, a very habitual thing. We all take bath, okay, and how she tries to compare it with the process of writing. It is because the poet has got a good memory. The poet remembers the details of a habit. Do you remember the detail of brushing your teeth in the morning? Do you remember the details of eating a breakfast? And if you have got a good memory, you will definitely be able to combine that memory with something exceptional in your mind, with an exceptional idea in your mind. And that is what good writers, not only poets, writers and would always try to do. So memory of your reader is important. Jog the memory of the reader with, surprise the reader with a new image. Your memory is important because it is only if you got a good observing skills, if you got a good memory, that you will be able to bring out something and connect that normality with abnormality. Now, you should always try to memorize the joins. Now, this you might call me the old school, but this is very important. The man in the slide that is Marcel Proust, and he used to translate and annotate. Okay, John Ruskin for 12 years, and he also followed the writing styles of Flaubert and Balzac whenever he wrote articles for Le Figaro. So, and I've also read that there are creative writers, very talented writers, who actually copy down the entire story, or a couple of poems, or a novel itself of another person, by hand, because they feel that that is the only way in which they'll be able to get familiar with the writing styles of the giants who have gone before them. Copy them down by hand. See, creative writing or learning creative writing is not simply a 1 hour technical session. It is something different. It is much more than a technical session. It is actually something which involves a lot of pain. It is reading those people who have gone before you. It is paving path for people who comes after you. You are not simply engaged in writing down something randomly. You are engaged in the process of life. You are engaged in what can be called a life and death activity. So it is painful. It is just like giving birth. It's just like giving birth. It is such a painful affair, and memory is very important. So try to memorize the giants, their vocabulary, their style, and we don't do it to copy them. We don't do it, to be them. No, we do it if you are familiar with the writing styles of maybe 10 people have gone before you, 10 exemplary writers, I'm sure that you will be the 11th person, or you can bring out a 11th style of yourself. And that is why you should be familiar with 10 people. It is only if you learn to count up to 10 that you will be able to bring out the number 11. So, which is why this is important. Reread, memorize, look at, and be familiar with the giants. Memory workout is very important in creative writing because first of all, we should all have a thorough vocabulary. Try to learn new words. Keep yourself updated. I mean, what are the new words which are being added into the dictionary? Please keep yourself updated in whichever language you would like to write. Be familiar with, as I already mentioned, the setting, the character, the plot, the technicalities. You should definitely have some kind of an idea about the critical world because, of course, your work is going to be reviewed in future by critics. So even though I said at the very beginning of the session that if you are a critic, your creativity will definitely be spoiled in one way or the other. At the same time, I would also say that you should have a background reading of criticism if you really want to bring out a good character, if you want to bring out a perfect setting, if you need a complete plot. Memory diary, as I already mentioned, is also very important. Observe everything which comes in front of you. Maybe you are journeying in a bus, maybe you are traveling in train. Observe people. I mean, don't intrude into their privacy, okay? Keep your observation inside the limits, but at the same time, observe people. Observe places, look for minute details. It might be a random object, maybe a tire which you find in a workshop. Observe the tire, look at the grooves, look at what is inscribed on the tire, look at the texture. I mean, feel the texture if possible. Look at the color, look at the color variations, look at the possibilities of this tire in another setting. Okay, memory diary, and record everything in a diary. Keep a diary for this. Keep recording. Creative writing does not mean that today you attend a technical session and tomorrow onwards you start writing. No. From tomorrow onwards, I would definitely request you to keep a memory diary. Randomly record. Maybe for 6 months, that is the only thing that you would be writing. But after 6 months, I can assure you, you will start creatively thinking in creative writing. The third thing which is important to be noted when we talk about creative writing is that is where does this creativity happen? Jerry Jenkins is the co-author of the Left Behind series, and I'm sure that you're familiar with him. Says it can happen anywhere, which is true for many of the writers. Fiona Mosley, who won who was actually shortlisted in 2017 for the Man Booker Prize for her novel Elme. Actually, she wrote that novel. She typed that novel on her phone when she was commuting for work, to and fro work, for 4 years. So for her, that motion, the notion of the motion was the idea behind, or that was what was the setting for her writing. And there is a link, I've actually copy pasted the link here. There is a series of poems which are being done by Illinois. I mean, I've actually subscribed or I like Illinois, which is why I have copy pasted that link over here. They've beautifully kind of pictured or given a pictorial representation of the poem Creativity by Charles Bukowski. Charles Bukowski says creativity starts now. You have been saying all these excuses forever. I got a job, I got three or four children to take care of, I got to do the laundry, the kitchen, etc. And I should, kind of leave all this if my creative spirit has to awaken. No, dear friend, you are wrong. You will never write if you think so, because you have enough resources right now. You can think, you can write now itself, but you're not doing it. And then you think for better options. I can write only if I get a space for myself. That is not going to happen. If you are an original thinker, you cannot but write. Even if you are inside a prison, you would write it somewhere. Okay. At the same time, there are writers or poets who specifically demand locations. For instance, J.K. Rowling started her Harry Potter series in Elephant House, Edinburgh. She used to visit the cafe every morning, sit there for some time, and then write down the initial chapters of Harry Potter. There are people who are very specific about their table, the way in which the table is arranged. There are people who are very specific about the way in which the laptop is, kind of presented before them, the desktop. There are people who are very much particular about going outside the house, sitting inside the garden and writing. Emily Dickinson did a lot of writing inside her garden. So there are people who really need that particular setting for the writing to come. So these are two options. You can belong either to Jerry Jenkins, or you can belong to the J.K. Rowling Harry Potter kind of thing. But it can happen, it should happen. That's it. Whether you choose a particular spot, or whether it comes anywhere. One of my friends, R. Sangeeta, who's a Malayalam poet, she told me once that many of her poems were actually, the idea for the poems, and many of the poems which were actually born when she used to travel from Kottayam to Chinganasheri in a bus. And she used to type it down or write it down somewhere. It's possible. We all carry tabs and smartphones with us today, so you got every right, type down a poem even inside a bus. When on bed, when you're watching a film, in between watching a film, it's possible. It can happen anytime, anywhere. Now, this is Fiona Mosley, who was shortlisted in 2017 for Man Booker Prize and won 2018 Polari Prize for her debut LGBT writing. Now, how can you creatively engage readers? What is the crux of creative writing? It's a kind of a summarizing and moving to the end of the session. Gather information from the news, from stories which people tell you, from stories which you have heard in the past, maybe the stories which your grandmother or your grandfather told you when you were very young, and re-narrate those stories. And it can even be, scenes which you watch from your window. See, let me come back to Twyla Tharp. Twyla Tharp says that one of her dance masters had an apartment which faced the busy road. So in between the dance practices, she used to watch the traffic from the window, and then gradually she began to understand that her master had such a kind of a dance pattern, or followed such a kind of a dance pattern which resembled the traffic which was passing down the lane. So she kind of began to look at a routine traffic in the form of a dance. And when I read this, I could not help but think about the possibilities of writing down a poem, and I did pen down or scribble something on how the traffic and human life is, and human activities are invariably connected with each other. That is how you can creatively engage the reader. Twyla Tharp creatively engaged me when she mentioned this experience of hers, and I could creatively bring out a poem. I'm not saying that it is a good poem or one of the best poems which I've ever done, or it is something which is readable. No, I'm not claiming anything for myself. But at the same time, she could creatively engage me to inspire my creativity, or to kind of provoke the creative sense in me. So what do you mean by creatively engaging the reader? It is the ability to associate with the reader. It is the ability of making the reader associate with the image that you want to bring out. It is also the ability to, bringing a spark in the reader. so that the reader can also be assured of a writing space. Keeping a notepad, as I already mentioned, is very important. It doesn't mean that you should write down, in a sequential manner. You should jot down all the notes, the way in which we do for the exams. No, sketch a storyline. And maybe you got a character in mind, but you cannot really put into words how that character should be. You can always sketch the character. That doesn't mean that you should be a professional artist. No, I'm not a professional artist, but I do sketches. And after I do sketches, I get an idea, and then sometimes I cannot really put that idea into words. So what I do is I just sketch that idea in a notebook, and I write random thoughts in my diary. Uh, Very random thoughts in my diary. So, and I just flip through the diary, and sometimes some thoughts just strike, and that becomes matter for another kind of a writing. And try to write alternative endings to the poems, to stories you're familiar with. That will definitely give you a spark to come out with another story. Then always keep a personal section in your diary, with bringing out, as I already mentioned, anything new which you encounter, anything innovative, anything which, it might be a random thought, it might be something which suddenly struck you when you washed your face. Just jot it down somewhere. It will definitely help you later. Now, sticking down photos and newspaper clippings, that is something which will help you a lot, because maybe later you are in between writing down an essay or a story, and then you're stuck, and then you want something to kind of trigger you to move forward. Maybe a newspaper clipping would do. I have a very young friend of mine. She's just 18 years old. She does very beautiful sketches. So one of the sketches, when I saw it, it was of a mother and a baby, and I don't know why it just hit me like anything. Maybe because I am a mother and I got a 4-year-old. I mean, the eyes of that mother, the eyes is actually something which captured me. That woman who became a mother, and I mean, that the mother's eyes. And then when I talked to her, she said she saw a random picture in the newspaper of a mother and a child, which actually provoked her or triggered her into drawing that picture. So it might be a newspaper clipping, it might be an article in the newspaper, it might be a photo, it might be a random picture which you find in a magazine. It can all trigger your creativity. This is the way in which you can creatively move into creativity with which you can engage your readers. Now the last part. You will definitely face a number of blocks on the path to creativity, and writer's block is something which everybody knows. Now, Daphne Gray Grant, who runs Publication Coach and who has been the editor of many newspapers, says two things which will help you to clear your block. One is, don't edit while you write. And this is quite difficult, because we have this tendency to keep editing ourselves. You write down one paragraph of a story, you go back to the first line, and then you edit. You keep on editing. Day 1, day 2, day 3, you will edit, and you won't move the second paragraph, which is very true. Write the story completely as it comes to your mind in as many days as you would definitely want, but don't edit it when you're writing. After you finish writing, then you spend more number of days to edit it. See, Ben Okri, I had the good fortune to listen to him in Jaipur Literature Festival a couple of years ago, and he said after writing down a poem, he leaves the poem on the desk for 6 months, and in between the 6 months, he has already written down the poem. He did not do any editing when he wrote the poem. In this period of 6 months, that poem undergoes a lot of editing. That in the end, he brings out something which is quite different from what happened, or which he had actually brought out initially. Now that's fine. Okay, that is really fine. But if you keep on editing again and again and again without completing the poem, what happens is that all that will remain is editing. And then Daphne says that is because editing is not something which belongs to the diffuse mode of brain. Now, it is something which belongs to the focused mode of brain. I hope that you're familiar with the focus mode and the diffuse mode. Diffuse mode is actually something which gives you much more alternatives. Focus mode is quite, Editing actually comes under focus mode because you are focused on the work and you're supposed to make it correct. But when you're on diffuse mode, everything is a possibility. Okay, there is no limit to possibilities. And mapping is actually something which will help you in a diffuse mode. When you start writing down a story, don't write a story in a linear fashion. Do mind mapping. Bring in the core idea, the motive that you want to convey. Bring in the basic idea, the crux of a poem, write it at the middle of a page which is kept horizontally, not vertically but horizontally. Write the idea in the middle, then do the mapping. Just like neurons, connecting one to the other. Just like, it should resemble a kind of a nervous system at the end. So that all the ideas are, like branches connected to one another, and then you start writing. Because when you do mind mapping, brain gets an idea that it can expand in different directions. It need not be focused on something, on one particular sentence. That is what you do when you edit. You focus on the word, you focus on the sentence structure, you focus on grammar, you focus on vocabulary, but that won't help you in creativity. If you want to be helped as a creative writer, keep your brain on diffuse mode, or what we call the DALI method. And if you feel stuck at some point of time, leave the table, leave the place, go out for a walk, go and talk with your friends, go for a swim. Please don't think that when you write you should always be shut down in a room, that there should be a poet's ivory tower. No, you need such a space, but not always. In between, if you feel that you're facing a block, take a break. That is what Daphne says. Over planning and under planning can both be hindrances to creativity. Some people are so focused that they have got a plan A and a plan B, and then they got C and D and E and a plan F. Now, there won't be anything which will, or they won't really accept anything which can occur after the plan F. That can be a hindrance to creativity. Keep yourself open. Lack of planning, definitely, that is also a hindrance to creativity. You need to have a basic plan. You need to have a ritual if you want to write. If you want to become a writer, there should be a ritual, there should be a practice. You should discipline yourself into how many hours can you spend reading? How many hours can you spend writing every day? And that should never have anything. I mean, there should not be an excuse at all for that. You should find it out, whether it's in the morning or in the evening or in the afternoon, or after everybody sleeps in your house. Everything is up to you. But once you fix the time, stick on to the time. Planning is very important. At the same time, be flexible. Read beyond your genre and also read beyond your discipline. You might be interested in literature. That does not mean that you should not attend classes on physics, or you should not know anything about environment. You should, because all that comes into literature. Literature is a study of life, as we all, even though that is a cliche right now, or it appears to be a cliche, it's a truth. So read beyond disciplines. Read a little bit of social sciences, read a little bit of science. You won't be able to understand everything, of course not, but you'll be able to gather something. Watch videos which are from other disciplines, and always stick to the spine. So you all have read Italo Calvino's If on a Winter's Night. If on a Winter's Night is a best text for postmodernist. It's a best example for a postmodernist text because it got everything in it. It is a text about text. It is it's writing about writing. It's a metafiction. You can call it whatever you want. It's a perfect example for intertextuality. But in spite of all the roundabout way in which the plot progresses, you start with a novel, you move to novel 2, then you move to another part of novel 3, finally you come out reading almost 11 novels in one novel. At the end, Italo Calvino did not forget the spine or the motive or the crux of that novel, and that was, it is writing about writing. It is the possibilities of writing. It is intertextuality. It is text. So no matter wherever your thoughts go, whatever characters you bring in, whatever different kinds of settings you present in a story, or whatever different plots you try to intervene together in a novel, whatever basic ideas you try to bring inside a short poem, Please don't forget the basic idea. The reader should get the basic idea at the end of the reading. And that is what I mean by sticking to the spine. If you don't do it, that will again be a hindrance to creativity. Maybe you got 10 very beautiful ideas and you try to club all the 10 ideas together in one poem. Sorry, it won't work out. That is a hindrance to creativity. You make 10 poems or even 20 poems with 10 ideas. That is fine. But don't try to bring in all together in one. Now, let me just wind up with a quote from Twyla Tharp again. Creativity is an act of defiance. Now, that doesn't mean that you should always turn your back at the world and you should always keep an angry face and you should always be the angry bird. No. Creativity is an act of defiance in other ways too. Creativity is an act of defiance in a negative world. For example, I just quote an example. It's a negative world. As we began this session, I said it's Corona times, it's COVID. Creativity can help people to start thinking positively. Give something positive to the audience. Give something positive to the readers. That is an act of defiance. You are defying the law. You are defying the norm. You are defying the natural calamity. You are defying the natural disaster when you can laugh at it. Creativity is an act of defiance. Okay, there is something bad which is happening around you. Creativity is an act of defiance if you write against it. So creativity is not simply romanticism alone. Creativity is much more. So thank you so much. And these are actually two examples which I took from the internet. One is from Noor Nahar, a Pakistani poet. She is basically 25 years old, 25, 26 years old, and she has brought out a book, a collection of her poems, which has sold more than a million copy, I should say, just like Nairobi cover. And this is actually something this is actually an art journal of hers. On one side, you find the image, which is stuck from newspapers or something which she has drawn for herself. And then on the other side, you have the poem. So if you can maintain an art journal like this, that will definitely help you in bringing out your creative spirit. So thank you so much for patiently traveling with me through this session. I know that it was a bit long. It's almost an hour, but thank you so much. And I really, really do hope that you would start writing and you would become somebody who thinks differently, who is a repertoire of memories, who is somebody who can instigate other readers into creative experimenters, and who would finally bring out the best creative work which has ever come in. Thank you.